Sergeant is here with the papers today. You're going to start off with that flare-up of violence in the east of Ukraine, Alison.
Yeah, it's the worst fighting that the region has seen in a year, and papers are sounding the alarm. You can see in the Courrier International, they wonder if we're on the eve of a humanitarian disaster. In the town where the fighting is taking place, 8,000 people are without electricity, heating, and running water, and all of this in the middle of winter. Temperatures are below freezing, and the article reminds us that some evacuations have begun, but the paper is still worried.
Now, neither separatists nor the Ukrainian army taking any responsibility for provoking this fighting in the first place. Some papers seeing a bit of a coincidence of timing, though.
Yeah, the exact events leading up to the violence are murky, but the Moscow Times notes that they did spark right at the end of January, which was just after that phone call between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin. The article's headline is also a nod to Trump. You can see Donbass is drifting into an alternative peace, kind of a reference to Donald Trump's talk of alternative facts. So the paper says that the Minsk peace deal, that we might see evidence of both sides trying to renegotiate the Minsk peace deal now that there's a new president in the White House.
White House, meanwhile, refusing to comment on the situation.
That's right. They've put out only a neutral statement of concern that doesn't mention Russia and Russian-backed separatists. For this writer in Slate, that's a very curious reaction from the Trump administration. This writer reminds us that Obama backed Kiev in the conflict and sanctioned Russia for supporting the separatists in East Ukraine. And this writer says that the fighting seems like Russia is trying to see what it can get away with under Trump's new administration.
That new administration has a confirmed new Secretary of State overnight for us here in Europe, Rex Tillerson.
Yes, and the former oil executive has his work cut out for him. You can see him there in this cartoon from the Chicago Tribune. He's having a flaming globe thrown into his face. We're not sure by whom, maybe the Congress or by the former Secretary of State, John Kerry. And they're saying to him, "It's all yours, Tillerson, enjoy."
Let's get our hands on that. All cut out for him then in Ukraine, but also Tehran launching a missile.
Yeah, now Iran insists that this launch doesn't breach a UN Security Council resolution restricting its ballistic missile program. The U.S. says, though, that it does, and said yesterday that they were putting Iran on notice. That story's on the front page of the Tehran Times today, along with a warning for Donald Trump. It says Donald Trump cannot shut out Iran if he wants to defeat the Islamic State group.
And the American media is also expressing some concern over the Trump's administration's quite hard stance so far in Iran.
Yeah, the Los Angeles Times is accusing Donald Trump of what they call saber rattling at Iran. The paper takes issue in particular with that phrase on notice, putting Iran on notice, saying we don't really know what that means, and the administration hasn't clarified what that means and has not ruled out military action against Iran. So the paper says this could be part of a strategy to intimidate Iran, but it might actually backfire and pave the way for war.
I mean, tense relations perhaps between the US and Iran, nothing new. But I mean, Donald Trump's been ruffling quite a lot of feathers, hasn't he?
Yeah, he had a bad conversation on Saturday on the phone with Australian Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull. And that phone call happened on Saturday, but the Washington Post has just come out with the details today. And Trump said that it was by far his worst phone call with the leader, and he was particularly upset by a deal the U.S. had made to accept refugees from an Australian detention center, and that deal he called the worst deal ever.
Let's change the subject. We're going to look at reactions at the British papers to the Parliament vote yesterday to allow the start of Brexit negotiations.
Yeah, we'll have just a quick look through the few British front pages. The right-wing papers, as you can imagine, are very happy about this result. The front page of the Daily Mail, we see we have liftoff, and the paper calls it a momentous day for Britain. Meanwhile, the newspaper I also plays on this idea of a liftoff, but for them, it's a launch into the unknown, and they're the paper is not looking forward to what they say will be quite a bitter fight with Brussels over this divorce settlement.
Yeah, that's something that's going to run for the next few years at least. Let's get back to the US now, though. February is Black History Month, and Donald Trump marked its beginning yesterday, in fact, with a speech at the White House. Didn't go all too well, though.
No, there's been a lot of criticism of this speech. The headline in this article from Fusion kind of says it all. Trump's Black History Month speech was not about history and barely about Black people.
And those who were rather disappointed with that speech yesterday, they're kind of looking elsewhere for inspiration as they mark Black History Month now.
They're turning away from their president and towards their Queen Bey, as her fans call her. That's, of course, Beyoncé. She announced yesterday on Instagram that she is pregnant with twins. That's a photo taken from the announcement. And this writer from the Daily Beast found that that's a much more fitting kickoff to Black History Month than the president's speech. And the writer says that with women's rights and access to reproductive health care right now being called into into question that Beyonce's pregnancy actually also acts as a rallying cry, and being pregnant is going to put her in a position to be a real advocate for women's reproductive health.
So that's the first official picture then of the baby?
Yeah, the first time we see her naked stomach.
Okay, that's interesting. I love the way the flowers and the veil have been placed on as well. Thanks a lot. Thanks, Alison. Alison with the papers on France 24.